Cambyses, the next king of the Achaemenid Empire. And very soon he will be invading Egypt. But why? Well, as usual, the fight is over a girl. The pharaoh of Egypt, Amasis, had promised Cambyses his daughter. But a few days before the marriage, Amasis sends another girl, not her daughter. And Cambyses is furious. However, we believe that this was just a pretext for war. The actual reasons had something to do with some lands on the east coast of Mediterranean, namely Gaza. It was a major port, and both the Egyptians and the Persians wanted this badly. This and many other reasons led Cambyses to invade Egypt. And in 525 BC, in the Battle of Pelusium, the Egyptians proved to be no match for the powerful Persian army. And that's it. The 2,000-year-old dynasty of the pharaohs of Egypt falls into the hands of Cambyses of Persia. After Cambyses, Darius becomes the next great king of the Achaemenid Empire, and during his reign there are many military expeditions. For example, he invades India from the east, extending the boundaries of the Persian Empire into the Indian territories. Also, he invades the Scythians from the north and the northwest. He follows them around the Black Sea all the way to modern-day Bulgaria. Therefore, Darius reaches a region called Thrace. This geographical and historical region covers Bulgaria, parts of Greece, and Turkey. The evidence of Darius' presence around the Black Sea was actually recently discovered. In 2016, the Russian archaeologists discovered this inscription by Darius written in the Old Persian language. It was in the city of Phanagoria. It hasn't been fully deciphered yet. And now, the Persian Empire is at its greatest extent. From the northwest to Greece and Bulgaria, from the east to India, from the southwest to Libya, and from the northeast close to China. We are looking at one of the earliest coins in the history of Achaemenid Empire. After Cyrus invaded Lydia and he defeated the king of Lydia, Croesus, he realized that the Lydians were a coin-based economy. Unlike the Persians and other Iranian populations that exchanged goods, for example, exchanged silver for milk and yogurt or whatever, the Lydians, they had coins, and Cyrus loved the idea. And here is probably the very first coin in the history of humanity. It was made in the kingdom of Lydia. Darius of Persia comes to power, and he wanted to have a coin of his own. So he changed the concept and the shape. He put the image of kings on top of the coins. However, the coins were still being manufactured in Lydia. All the Achaemenid coins from the beginning of the empire all the way to the end were manufactured in Lydia. Darius took it one step further and he designed the gold coin. One gold coin was equivalent to 20 silver coins. It allowed commerce in large scales. The word gold in the Old Persian language was darik, and as languages evolved, it turned into zarik and then zar in the modern Persian language, which means gold. The tradition of manufacturing gold coins continues until the present time. Now, you could have taken your gold or silver coin anywhere in the empire, for example in the east to India, or in the west to Egypt, or Lydia, or Armenia, or whatever, and you could have made purchases. The coins had become the basic unit of the Achaemenid economy. The Achaemenid Empire had become very large. By 500 BC, it contained about 40% of the world population, and it has nothing to do with its geographical size. It has something to do with the fact that most of the world population was residing in Middle East, Mediterranean, and India, and those are the basic areas that the empire covered. Now, when you have such a large diversity of populations, you have to come up with a systematic design, a political solution to run this empire without it falling apart. The idea of satrapies goes all the way back to the Akkadian Empire. Sargon of Akkad installed governors that were extremely loyal to him, and so he could control wider regions, and that's how he established his empire. The Persians will take the idea one step further. They introduced a highly sophisticated tax system and military recruitment system. Now, each square that I have drawn here is one satrapy. The idea of satrapy is similar to states in a modern version. For example, United States, more than 40 states, and each state has a governor. The governor's job is to collect the taxes of that state. You could have state tax or you could have federal tax. Now, the federal taxes would be spent on the federal budget, for example, the US military or healthcare or whatever. Now, keep that idea in mind and apply it to the ancient version of satrapies. Each square is a satrapy, and the larger the square is, the more tax they had to pay. For example, the Indian satrapy, they had to pay 3,600 Babylonian talents of silver. Talent was an old unit of measurement for mass. It was used in Babylon and Assyria. Another example, Mesopotamian satrapy. They had to pay 1,000 Babylonian talents of silver. The Lydians, 500. Bactrians, 360, and so on. All the taxes were sent to the capital, Susa. Susa was the administrative capital of the empire. It was the city of paperwork and signing contracts and bureaucracy. So each satrapy had a satrap. Satraps were similar to modern-day governors. Their job was not only collecting taxes and sending it to the central capital, but also providing the empire with soldiers, also training the soldiers. Also, the satrap's job was to defend that specific satrapy. As a result of all these tax monies, the Persian Empire's military was getting stronger and larger day by day. Now, why did such a large amount of tax money go towards the military? The answer to that is nomadic invasions. No empire in the ancient world was safe from nomadic invasions. For example, why do you think the Great Wall of China was built? It was to protect the Chinese empires from the nomadic invasions from the north, mostly from Mongolia. Now, even the Roman Empire was not safe from these invasions, but the Persians were no exception to the rule. So at the beginning of this video, we talked about Darius invading and chasing the Scythians, the nomadic Scythians in the north. Darius chased them all the way to Europe. He wanted to secure the northern regions of the empire. That's where the empire was mostly vulnerable. Darius also created the royal guard, about 10,000 fully trained soldiers who guided the king into the battlefield. Other places where the tax monies went were constructions and roads. Regarding construction, Darius built a city called Persepolis. I will do one video on this one alone.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Don't blame the Persians though. Yes, they set up the system in such a huge scale for the first time. I'm now using Google Earth to measure the distance from the east side of the empire from Indian satrapy all the way to the western front, which is the Ionian satrapy, and that's about 4,200 kilometers. Now, just to get an idea about how large this number is, let's head to United States. Starting from the west coast in California, we're going to measure the distance all the way to the east coast, landing somewhere in North Carolina, and that's around 4,000 kilometers. So, we get the idea. With the technologies of the time, it was almost impossible to deliver the messages on time. Let's say the king wanted to send a message to the western part of the empire. It would have literally taken months. So they had to come up with a way. During the reign of Darius, the empire started building highly efficient roads, and lots of them. There were caravanserais in the middle of these roads, so when the horses were tired, you could exchange horses and carry on riding. You could even exchange men, so one group could go to sleep, the other would carry on delivering the message to the other side of the empire. I'm now standing on one of the remnants of this ancient royal road. It is about 3 meters wide and the length, well, around 2,500 kilometers. Yeah, it starts from the city of Susa, it goes to Babylon, and from Babylon it went to Nineveh, and from Nineveh it went to the other side of Anatolia. Now I should mention that part of this road was constructed by the Assyrian and Babylonian empires. However, the Persians, they connected the pieces together so the horses did not have to ride off-road and their speed would not be affected. The east to west roads, starting from Babylon going all the way to Behistun or Bistun. And I'm in Bistun right now looking at those rocks in the back. Those rocks have a lot of rock reliefs and inscriptions on them from the times of the empire. The most famous one is the Behistun inscription of Darius. You can see Darius standing with a lot of prisoners in front of him and some servants and guards in his back. And you can see writings around Darius. He is describing his military campaigns, the regions he conquered, and also the satrapies he created. About 100 meters away from this inscription, there is the remnants of the road, the west to east road. The road continued from Behistun to Ekbatane, the center of Media, and then to Ray, which is in south side of modern-day Tehran, and then to Arya. Arya was a region in modern-day Afghanistan, and then to Bactria. Bactria was also in modern-day Tajikistan, and then to Sogdia. Sogdia covered parts of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. And that's it. That's the west to northeast road of the Achaemenid Empire.